Never stay at Walmart overnight. Because the last time I stayed behind at a Walmart, I almost didn't make it out alive. It started as just another Thursday night. I'd just been promoted to assistant manager. I was proud of it, not gonna lie. For a high school dropout like me, it felt like a middle finger to everyone who said I wouldn't amount to much. I wanted to take my newfound responsibilities seriously, so I volunteered to stay behind and lock up. Plus, gave me time to think, to plan out my next steps in life, you know? Schooling wasn't cheap, and every extra hour I put in here was a step closer to getting back into a classroom. I needed to prove people wrong. Soon enough, I was the only one left in the store. I went to the back and started an inventory check. It was boring work, counting boxes of overstocked cereal and mismatched socks. It was oddly comforting, though. The stockroom was my domain. This was where I could make sense of the chaos, organize it, control it. It was a small thing, but it mattered to me. It was mine. I decided to do one final sweep of the store, since checking the inventory was done. Protocol and all that. The store was dead quiet by the time I got to the main floor. The lights had been shut off, so I used a flashlight to get around. I started down the first aisle, ticking off mental check boxes as I went. Walking through the aisles of a Walmart after hours, it was a surreal experience. It was just me and the shelves. I was making my way to the back of a store to do a final loop when I wandered into the toy section. But the further I walked, the more I noticed something wasn't quite right. It was like the store was stretching out in front of me. The back wall, it was always just out of reach. I looked behind me, and it was like I hadn't moved at all. I could see the doors in the distance. I was stuck right in the middle of this Walmart. I figured I must be pretty tired from that day shift, so I picked up my pace. But the end of the aisle never came. Instead, it felt like I was walking on a treadmill. The same superhero figures blurred past me in an endless loop. I started to sweat, and it wasn't just because I was practically jogging. I was getting the sense that something was very wrong here. Above me hung the same blue Walmart sign that said toys on it. The back wall was still a long way away. I looked back, and I saw that the doors were still in the same spot. It was like I hadn't moved at all. I stepped back in shock, and I bumped into a solid wall. I swore it wasn't there a second ago. It was at least a few more feet ahead of me last I looked. But at the same time, I was just relieved I'd reached the end of the aisle. I took a deep breath. I just needed to move to the front and get out of here. The front doors didn't look that far away. Shouldn't take me long to get there, I told myself. But as I walked towards the doors, the Walmart seemed to stretch again. The entrance looked like it was moving away from me. I stopped, my breathing getting faster. I started to feel dizzy. I shut my eyes, hoping that when I opened them, everything would be normal again. But when I looked at the front of the store again, the doors had disappeared. Instead, right in front of me was a new wall of display shelves full of soda. I was trapped. Behind me was a wall. In front of me was another wall. I looked to my left. There was no exit that way. I turned to my right, and I jumped in surprise. Instead of more Walmart shelves, there was a hallway I'd never seen before. It was cut into the wall, like it had always been there. It looked like the back rooms of some office building. It had plain white carpeting and yellow wallpaper. Dim fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead in intervals. The shelves of soda stopped just before Walmart's linoleum tile turned into the carpet. For a moment, I just stood there, staring. The hallway seemed so normal that it shouldn't be there. It felt wrong. I felt sick just looking at it. I looked away, trying to block it out. Without thinking, I started running down a random aisle. I didn't know where I was going or how to find the exit again. I just knew I needed to get away from that yellow hallway. It was too dark to see far ahead, but the aisle just kept going. And on either side of me, the shelves seemed to be getting taller. Or maybe the ceiling was getting lower. I wasn't sure, but the shelves were brushing the ceiling now. The more I went down this aisle, the more it felt like I was going down a tunnel. It was like Walmart had shrunk into this one alley. It's like being in a hallway, I thought. And that made me pause. I looked down, and I saw I was now standing on white carpet. I turned around, expecting to see the rest of the store. Instead, there was just a blank wall covered in dingy yellow wallpaper. Written on the wall in black Sharpie were the words, "Keep walking." I looked around. There were still shelves full of stuff on both sides of me. It was like Walmart had morphed into that strange office hallway. I looked at the shelves for anything I could use. They were now a weird mix of random items from the store. Hair dryers, towels, Barbies, carrots, and other stuff. I looked around until I spotted a backpack. I didn't know where I was. Stocking up on supplies seemed like a good idea. I picked up some bottles of water and whatever food I could find. After a quick break, I continued walking. I couldn't see that far ahead of me, even with a flashlight, but I did notice that the shelves eventually emptied out. Soon enough, there was nothing but bare metal racks on both sides of the hallway. I kept walking until I saw a doorway to my right. It opened into a big room that didn't look like any part of the store I knew. The room had random pillars going from the floor to the ceiling. A few Walmart shelves were piled up in a corner. Other than that, the room was completely empty. I saw a few doorways on each of its walls. Most led back into different yellow hallways, while others led to what looked like bigger rooms. I saw another message spray-painted on the wall closest to me. "Always choose the hallways," it read, but the letters were smudged, as if someone had tried to wipe them away. I wasn't sure what to make of that. But whoever wrote it seemed to know much more about this place than I did. So I chose the nearest door that led to another hallway. It wasn't long before I found a first aid kit mounted to the wall. I opened it, hoping to find something useful, but no luck. The box was almost empty. All that was left was a small roll of bandages, plus some bloody cotton balls and an empty bottle of disinfectant. On the floor next to the kit was a big, dark stain and a blood trail leading down the hallway. Seeing all that, it made me wonder about other people here. Obviously, people had been exactly where I was. But where were they now? And how long had they been in here? I decided to follow the bloody trail. Wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. At least it meant someone else was in here. If I could find the others, then there was a chance we could find a way out of here. At the very least, I could learn more about what the hell was going on here.
As I continued walking, a strangely happy tune began to play. It sounded like broken elevator music, the kind that grates your ears. Curious, I followed the music until I found another doorway. It led to just another abandoned office space, except right in the center was a small stage. And on that stage was a guy in a mascot suit, bent down over something. But I didn't know what it was supposed to be, because the guy in the suit wasn't wearing the headpiece. Instead, I just saw the back of the guy's head. The suit was covered in faded blue fur, with a tail hanging off the back. "Hey!" I called out as I walked over to him. I was just relieved to find someone else. The guy straightened up, and that's when I realized something wasn't right. His neck looked broken, tilted to one side in a way that made me feel sick. His skin was too pale. And then he turned around, and I saw that I was talking to a mummified corpse. His skin was dried out, but he had this tube thing running from his mouth to the inside of the suit. The tube pulsed as if it was alive. The red tube then slid out of the man's mouth and shot towards me. I barely dodged it, and I broke into a sprint down the hallway. The mascot's song echoed behind me. Every few steps I took, something hard hit my backpack, throwing me off balance. It was that tube still coming after me, trying to grab me. Up ahead, I spotted a bunch of doors. Without thinking twice, I jumped into the first one I reached. In one corner was a pile of empty metal racks. I didn't stop to think. I just ran for that pile and I hid. Peeking out slowly, I watched as that mascot figure walked into the room, turning around as if searching for something. The tube attached to it moved like it had a mind of its own, slithering through the air. Even though the guy in the suit was clearly dead, I knew that he could still see me. His head flopped as the creature turned, and as it did, I saw that the mascot had the Walmart logo printed on its front. I waited until that mascot thing finally left. I didn't move an inch until the weird music that followed it around faded too. When it was finally gone, I looked around and I found one other exit. It looked like it led to a different room. I knew the rule was to stick to hallways, but that was where the mascot went. No way in hell I wanted to bump into that thing again. I figured I'd take my chances down the other exit. I ran towards it like my life depended on it. I got up to catch my breath, and I looked around. It was the same yellow hallway, but this one had more writing on the wall. I stepped into the next room, which was pitch black. I couldn't make anything out. Carefully, I took a step forward, and my foot caught on something. I managed to steady myself before I fell. I fumbled for my flashlight, wondering what I slipped on. I pointed it to the ground, and there under my foot was a blood-soaked Walmart vest. I looked around. This room was a small, narrow one. Along the walls hung more of the Walmart mascots. I swept my beam over each of them. Each suit was different. One was purple with patchy fur. Another was a dull yellow and covered with small feathers. But they all had one thing in common. a bright Walmart logo on their bellies. Some of the suits hung empty, their fabric sagging and lifeless, but others had mummified corpses in them. Their dried skin stood out through the parts of the suits that were torn or unzipped. On the other side of the room was a doorway. Even from where I was standing, I could see that it led out to a hallway. Carefully, I made my way through the room. I used my light to see ahead, but whenever the light hit one of the suits, it seemed to twitch. I clicked off my flashlight. The room went dark. I didn't want to provoke whatever those things were. Navigating through the dark, I kept my eyes on the exit every step. I was almost there. Around me, I could hear faint rustling sounds, like fabric brushing against each other. I was almost to the exit, and then I felt something squish under my shoe. It let off a high-pitched squeal as it squirmed under me. It had to be one of those tube things. Suddenly, I felt it wrap around my shoe and pull hard. The elevator music started up again, louder this time, and then more songs sounded. It was like the things were using the music to call out to each other. The different songs blended and jumbled together as the tube around my foot wrapped tighter. I made a break for it. I put all my strength into running forward. As I did, I managed to kick off my shoe and get away from the tube. But all around me, the mascot things were coming to life. I could feel the brush of their fur as they reached out, trying to grab me. I pushed my way through towards the exit. I was almost out when I was suddenly pulled backwards. One of them had grabbed onto my backpack. I tried to get loose, but I was dragged to the floor, choking on dust and mildew. In the corner of my eye, I could see a big green mascot move in front of the exit. Inside it was the corpse of a woman. Without thinking then, I launched myself at the green mascot. The woman's head flopped from side to side as we landed in the hallway. I leapt back to my feet, and I ran without looking back. I moved from one hallway to the next, not really knowing where I was heading. Every so often, I'd pass by a room, and there in the darkness, I could see one of those mascot figures. I learned quickly, stick to the hallways, do not go in the rooms. The corridors seemed endless, but I couldn't stop. I kept running until finally I saw something written on the wall. Another message. This one said, Walmart hallway, with an arrow pointing to the right. It was hard to read because someone had gone over the message in red Sharpie, just over and over as if to cover it up. To the right of the message were bloody handprints. After being in the blood room, I didn't want to make another mistake by not following the rules. I figured my best chance was to follow the messages on the wall and find whoever was writing them. So I made up my mind to follow this one too. I walked through the doorway the arrow pointed to, and I found myself in yet another hallway. This time, the walls were lined with Walmart shelves again, but these shelves were empty, covered in dust. Every now and then, I'd spot something random like a rubber duck or a cracked mug, but there was nothing useful. I wondered how long it'd been since the message was written. Maybe the shelves had been full at some point. What happened to those people? Did they get out? Or, well, I didn't even want to think about that. I kept walking, trying to figure out where I was, when I found another message on the wall. This one looked like it'd been written by a different person. It read, "Exit here," with an arrow pointing to the door beside it. The doorway led to a hallway that was nothing like the others. The walls were white, and the floor was made of that same shiny plastic you'd find in a high school gym. Metal doors lined both sides of the hallway. And then there was all the blood. The hallway was covered in it. Most of the blood stains were old and had turned brown, but some were bright red. Fresh. The air was thick with the smell of it, and I almost puked right then and there. The floor was slippery, and the hallway turned left at the end. I tried to open the first metal door, but it was locked. I checked all the doors as I went along, but they were all locked too. A lot of them had blood on them. When I got to the end and turned left, something unexpected caught my eye. A blue tent set up at the end of the hallway. In front of it, there was a man digging into a can of sardines like it'd been the best meal he'd had in years. He looked rough. He had long, matted hair and clothes that looked like they were thrown together from whatever he could find. The guy practically jumped onto his feet when he saw me. I can't believe it. Another person. I've been waiting so long for this," he said, crying. "Hey, I'm Paul," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was hoping to find people here, but not like this. Just how long had this guy been in here?" I looked at his makeshift home. "My name's Bobby. Bobby Wilson. Man, I don't even know how long I've been stuck in this place. One second I was locking up a Walmart in Arizona.
Then suddenly here I was. Oh my God, thank God you're here." Arizona? That threw me for a loop. I was nowhere near Arizona. I was in a Walmart in Ohio. I watched him as he talked. He looked pale and unsteady. Looked very thin, too, like he hadn't eaten or seen the sun in ages. He said he'd been here for a while and had been living off of scraps. "Bobby, what year did you get lost?" I asked. He looked nervous at that, like he had a hard time remembering the answer. 1998, I think. But that doesn't matter now. It's my time," he said. Bobby started walking towards me, but something about the way he looked made me nervous. There was definitely something he wasn't telling me. "Hey, have you been the one leaving those messages on the walls?" I asked, trying to figure him out as I backed up slightly. He was getting a little too close to me. Bobby paused for a second before nodding. Yeah, that was me. Just trying to help out," he said. That didn't sound too convincing. He definitely wasn't the only one leaving those messages. "Yeah, but what about all the blood in the hallway? What's that about?" I asked. Bobby's face changed, and he quickly said, "Oh, don't worry about that. It's just part of finding the exit, that's all." And then before I could answer him, he lunged at me. A Swiss Army knife was in his hand. I barely had time to dodge. I stumbled back a few steps as he kept coming for me. He looked desperate
as he begged me to help him escape. "You have to help me get out. To open the exit here, someone needs to give blood, but it can't be their own. I've been stuck in here so long. It's my time to go," he said. He showed me a big scar on his stomach. Look at this. I got it when the last person left. He tried to stab me again, and I tried to get out of the way, but I wasn't quick enough. The knife just barely cut my cheek. Bobby looked like he felt bad for a second. Look, man, I don't want to hurt you, but it's the only way out, he said. Bobby attacked me again, and we both fell to the ground. He was surprisingly strong, quickly flipping me over and holding me down. Look, I promise I won't kill you. I just need a little blood, he said, as he slowly dragged the knife across my chest. The cut wasn't deep, but it was wide, and I yelled out in pain. Using all my strength, I managed to push him off me. I flipped us over, so I was the one holding him down. But then Bobby's eyes went wide with shock. He looked down, and I did too. The knife wasn't in his hand anymore. It was in his stomach, and blood was soaking through his shirt. I tried to press down to stop the blood, but it didn't work. It kept coming, forming a pool around us. And then I heard doors unlocking and opening along the hallway. Bobby looked at me then, his eyes filled with a kind of sad understanding. I just wanted to see the sun again, he whispered. I tried to lift Bobby, determined not to leave him here. We're both getting out, I said to him. I picked Bobby up as best I could, and I started dragging him towards one of the open doors, but I could hear the sound of doors slamming shut behind us, one by one. Those doors, they don't stay open long. You gotta move faster, he managed to say. Just leave me behind. Shut up, man, shut up, I said. You don't get to order me around after using a knife on me, all right? We're both getting out of here. I'm not gonna leave you behind, all right? He stopped listening as he started going unconscious. I reached one of the doors just as it was starting to close, and I wasn't sure we'd get through in time. I remember what Bobby said. The doors needed blood to open. If that's what it takes, I thought. I took the knife, paused for a second, and then I cut my arm deeply. Blood began to pour out, dripping onto the floor. That seemed to do the trick. I pushed open the door with my good shoulder, and we tumbled into an abandoned storage room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the metal door we'd just come through disappear. But that didn't matter. Both Bobby and I were bleeding on the floor. A bit of light shone through a door across the room. It opened slowly, and a young man in a Walmart uniform came in. He looked shocked to see us. He needs an ambulance, I said, pointing at Bobby. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, listening to a steady beep of a machine beside me. I was confused, and I couldn't remember how I got there. Then I saw Bobby, sleeping in a bed next to mine. A nurse walked in, and I found out we were in a hospital in Florida. She told me I'd been missing for 5 months. I talked to the doctors and nurses, trying to learn what happened to us. They told me we'd both be staying in the hospital for a long time, hooked up to a vitamin drip. We were severely dehydrated, and I dropped about 20 pounds. They said we were lucky. Just a little more and we could have died of starvation. Bobby was still unconscious. But I had so many questions. One thing was clear, though. I had to warn others. So remember, whatever you do, do not stay at Walmart overnight.